And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Another day, another person flipping over. And I got to be honest, I never thought Pecker would be the one to backdoor Trump. I just never thought that was going to happen. But guess what? Breaking news. Pecker gets immunity. Let that sink in for a minute. Another not a good day for the Donald. And what's interesting to me is I saw that, and then I saw this poll that came out, this Ipsos poll, that said that nearly half of Republicans polled believe that the president should have the power to shut down news outlets for bad behavior. Whatever bad behavior is. And it was one of these things where, I hearkened back to, 2009 through 2016, all those Obama years. And I can't help but think what those people who want Trump to be able to shut down news outlets would have been saying had Obama even hinted anywhere close to that. How they would have lost their minds. And, I spent time, having a couple of back and forths via email with some right wingers that I deal with. And, they even were saying, well, there's too much liberal media out there. And you go, explain exactly where is that liberal media? And they all go, New York Times. And you go, okay, well, which is why they have conservative voices too. They're trying to find that middle of the road so they can say that they're nonpartisan. And I know that anything that conservatives don't agree with, they throw into the liberal media portion of the media. But I've yet to find this liberal media, this mass liberal media conspiracy that's out to get Trump. What I find is that Trump has been corrupt from the very beginning. And the reality is, I called this on Inauguration Day. I said this was going to be the most kleptocratic administration in the history of this country. The thieving would not end. The scandal would not end. And that Ronald Reagan was going to be, very happy in his grave, knowing that he no longer will be the one with the most convicts in his administration. And we're seeing it daily now. And I think it's going to get worse, and I think there's going to be more. So what ends up coming of this, and last night I talked with our good friend David Yankovich about, maybe why Democrats shouldn't be running on the impeachment thing just yet. And I got scolded for not being, a big cheerleader for impeachment. And I'll tell you, I don't necessarily want to see Trump impeached. And I've said this from the very beginning. It's been my position from the start. That I fear Mike Pence much more than I fear Donald Trump. Trump is erratic. He's narcissistic. He's who knows where one day to the next. And I'm okay with that to a certain degree. As long as he's not pushing buttons, as long as he's not getting us involved in wars, as long as he's not blowing stuff up, I'm okay with the insanity. I'm okay with the craziness that we see. And the reason is, and I've been very clear about this from the very beginning. I've been very clear every time I say I'm not in favor of impeaching Trump. My fear has been and will continue to be, I'm afraid of Mike Pence. I fear Pence enormously. I fear what a Pence administration would bring. Because understand, here's a guy who has a fairly high approval rating. Last time I checked, it was in the 60% range. Because he's not crazy. You don't see all kinds of insanity coming around his office. There isn't a constant swinging door. He knows how to run an office. He knows how to make sure that the lights are on and when they're supposed to be, and there aren't many scandals. He knows how to play the game. He knows how to maneuver the system. And my fear is an impeachment rips us all to shreds. And Pence comes in and acts smartly, like the grandfatherly figure who's going to bring us all together. He maybe even reaches out to Democrats and says, hey, let's do some little things to show bipartisanship, and basically lulls everybody back to sleep. You go back to 2009, we thought, Democrats thought, hey, we won. Everyone went back to their lives, went back to sleep, and that was the end of it. And hello, here we have Trump. He puts everybody back to sleep, and then the really bad, the really ugly stuff, because I fear Trump, again, as an ideologue, as a theocrat. And I threw the question out here, earlier today on Twitter, who do you fear more? Do you fear a white supremacist neo-Nazi? Do you fear the neo-Nazi? Do you fear them, or do you fear a Christian, a white Christian supremacist? Someone who's going to really push this theocratic message. And I'll be honest, I'm really afraid of Trump, of Pence, and what that means and where that goes. Because, look, you got Trump who's appointed, has nominated Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, which is going to be really ugly. It's going to be really dangerous. It's going to really attack, women's rights, workers' rights, consumers' rights, the civil rights, LGBTQ rights. You name it, we're all under attack. But even worse than that, they're going to do it from a theocratic point of view. We're going to be the Christian version of Iran. That's what scares me. Because then he starts pulling in people to fill regulatory positions who are extremely competent, but extremely ideological. I would argue a lot of the people that Trump has put forth they've been, not really, I would guess, overly qualified, but ideological, yes, but not really qualified. I mean, I look at billionaire Betsy, not really all that qualified. And she's done some bad stuff. She's done some terrible stuff, but not what she could have gotten away with. And what's really bizarre to me is that they still have regulatory bodies that aren't filled. I mean, they could still do a lot more damage. And fortunately, and this is my thing about, Trump is dysfunctional. And none of this stuff is actually, none of the really, really bad stuff is really happening. Not yet. Not like it could be, I think, with the Trump administration. I mean, with a Pence administration. To me, that's the really scary stuff. That the more you have what seems to be normalcy, the more Pence would bring much more streamline. And that would really, in my view, just completely screw things up. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Share some of those thoughts and tell me where I'm wrong. If you think I'm wrong, we should be going forward with impeachment. Now, look, I can be convinced of impeachment down the road as the Russia stuff comes out, as more of the crimes come out. Obviously, there's a point at which you can no longer have him in the White House because he is that badly tainted. He is that much of a national security issue. And look, just bad for the country. Now, there are some people who are telling me, well, Rick, Pence is just as bad. Well, you know what? We should be investigating that as well. And I'd love to hear some thoughts on that. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about Pennsylvania, the gubernatorial race here. There's an interesting race here. You've got a really very progressive governor in Tom Wolf, who wants to fund education and wants to push forward with Medicaid expansion and wants to do much more on social programs and education and all of that stuff and infrastructure and all of that. And then you've got a baby Trump character who is a destroyer, who is talking the same kind of nonsense that Trump ran on, calling people names. He's going to drain the swamp in Harrisburg, which the Republicans completely run. So a lot of that, but an interesting little twist. And when we come back, Matthew Chapman's going to share his thoughts on the little twist. He's the breaking news reporter over at AlterNet. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Own 90% of the wealth, 10% of the...
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
We need to stand united, but undivided we shall never fall. Remember all. People own 90% of the wealth.
Where smart policy and sound investment matters. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day the U.S. Congress approved the formation of the Commission on Industrial Relations. In the early 1900s, the terrible work conditions and entrenched resistance to union organizing had led to increased labor unrest. In 1910, 2 union members in San Francisco bombed the Los Angeles Times building, killing 20 people. The public outcry led officials in Washington to decide they needed to get serious about investigating the reasons behind the mounting anger of working people. The commission included 9 members, 3 workers, 3 employers, and 3 community members. The leader was Frank P. Walsh, a labor lawyer from Missouri. Led by Walsh from 1913 to 1915, the commission embarked on a sweeping investigation of the conditions of work in the United States. They conducted 740 interviews that took them 154 days to complete. Interviewees included IWW leader Big Bill Haywood, labor hellraiser Mother Jones, and champion of working people lawyer Clarence Darrow. The commission investigated the Paterson, New Jersey silk mill strike and multiple other work actions. For 3 days, the commission grilled John D. Rockefeller on the Ludlow massacre. The result was an 11-volume compilation of testimony. 100,000 copies of a shorter final report were published. The final report described the poor working conditions at many job sites and the brutal repression of the labor movement. It critiqued the treatment of agricultural workers. Predictably, many found fault with the commission's findings. The New York Herald called the commission's chairman Walsh a Mother Jones in trousers. Despite these critics, the comprehensive report stood as a powerful, detailed review of the conditions faced by thousands of working people every day. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
One of these days I'm gonna blow my top, and that sucker, he's gonna pay. Lord, I can't wait to see their faces when I get the nerve to say, take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, ricksmithshow.com. So, you bring it back here to Pennsylvania. This gubernatorial election here in Pennsylvania is one of the, in my opinion, is one of the most important in the entire country. If this election goes the baby Trump's way, Pennsylvania becomes a right-to-work state immediately. You see tax cuts for the millionaires and billionaires here. You see massive slashing and burning to education and social programs. Remember, this is the guy who flew over a local high school in his helicopter and looked down and said, everything looks fine down there. We don't need to do anything there, because everything from 1,500 feet, I guess, looks fantastic. Now, recently, he's come out and said he's not going to put out his tax returns. And here to share some thoughts and to tell us why he's not going to release the tax returns is Matthew Chapman. Matthew is the breaking news reporter over at AlterNet. Matthew, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi, good to be back.
So, baby Trump's not going to release his tax return. No Scott Wagner tax returns, right?
That's right. He's made it very clear he won't, and he's given a truly amazing reason why not.
Go ahead, give it to us. Give us the rationale on why baby Trump can't share his tax returns with the voters of Pennsylvania, so we can answer that question. Is the guy who may be our governor a crook?
Are you sitting down for this? So his exact words were, "You want the answer? I'm going to give you the answer, okay? We're non-union companies. If I disclose those tax returns, union representatives get a hold of my tax returns, go around to my employees' homes at night and say, 'Hey, Mrs. Jones, how much does your husband make?' She goes, 'Well, he makes this.' 'Well, this guy makes a lot more.'"
Yeah, and they would, and they should. And right now they should be taking that story around, because while families are struggling to make ends meet, especially those Penn waste workers, he's living fat and happy and large.
They absolutely should. I mean, this kind of arrogance is really tempting fate. I mean, it's bad enough to say you're not going to release your tax returns, but to have the nerve to say you're not going to release your tax returns because if you do, you're worried there's going to be a unionization drive at your company.
Yeah. Well, look, understand, Wagner is a guy who has been at war with organized labor in Pennsylvania for years now. He compared them to Putin and Hitler. He's actually, published the salaries of union leaders throughout the state, and pushed that narrative. And it's ironic to me that he doesn't want anyone to know what he's made, because he's gone after those union leaders whose salaries are public record. You can go and you can find how much any union leader earns in a year, and their members can do that as well. But yet a CEO of a company, or any company for that matter, we don't really get to know how much they're putting in their pockets.
That's absolutely right. And, that cuts to another issue, casualty of this whole debate, which is Pennsylvania voters' ability to judge whether a man who could become their governor has conflict of interest. I mean, we see all that stuff with Trump too. He refused to release his taxes. He ridiculously claims that he couldn't because they were under audit, which is nonsense. And then we see the result. He got away with it, and now he's using the presidency to enrich his businesses at every possible turn.
Yeah, but
who's to say that Wagner wouldn't do the same? I mean, the bare bones financials that he released to the ethics committee showed that he has about 30 streams of income, and we don't know very much about any of them.
Yeah, I mean, again, to me, the bigger question of this is if this is how he's going to react to his finances and to this, what's he going to do once he's in the public domain? How is he going to treat, sunshine laws? How is he going to treat freedom of information, right to know requests? How is he going to govern? And I would argue that it's much in this very secretive, backdoor kind of way.
That's absolutely true. It's a tremendous risk, and you need look no further than Wisconsin, where another fanatical anti-union governor, Scott Wagner, has made many moves to try to limit the scope of public records requests. Scale back those laws, make it so that government communications will be privileged. Like it's a mess out there.
No, I mean, and it goes back to you have to answer that question. Is the guy that's running for governor a crook? I mean, how much? I mean, to me, it's that fundamental question of where are his interests? What are his debts? Will there be that conflict of interest? As they're pushing one piece of legislation or another, how much will he benefit, and how much does that play into? I mean, there's so many questions here, and I don't know why he would want to, unless there's something really, really bad there. I don't know why you'd want to have everyone asking those questions of what's he hiding.
That's right. And, to me, the most amazing part is that he felt like it was okay for him to just say out loud, hey, it's, thwarting a unionization drive at my company is a perfectly valid reason why I shouldn't have to release my tax return. I mean, he's taking something that already looks shady, and he's just making it way worse.
Yeah. Or it's just you have this mindset that, this CEO, this dictator mindset that, I'll give you what you want. I'll give you what I want to give you, and you'll get nothing more.
Yep.
And that's not the quality that I want in a public servant. I mean, I know for years we've been saying, we want a president who's going to run, the country like a CEO, or a governor who's going to run it like a CEO. No, I don't, because they're little dictators. And we're seeing that playing out right now in Washington. I don't know why we'd want a baby version of it here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and especially considering that the next governor is going to wield or rather we should say the person who wins this November is going to have an incredible amount of power going into 2021 because it's a census year,
right?
And they'll have the veto pen over the legislature's own backroom deals about districting. I mean, the last time it was an absolute disaster, and it took the state Supreme Court to step in and fix the whole mess.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, if Tom Wolf wins, and I hope with all of my ability that he does, if he wins, then Pennsylvania has kind of a shot to not be a third world state. If Wagner wins, do you remember how fast Kentucky became a right to work state? Pennsylvania will break that record.
Yeah. It was within like months of
full
control of the whole government.
It was the first possible Saturday. They called a special session on Saturday.
Oh my goodness!
9 o'clock in the morning, and they rammed it through like thieves.
Yeah,
in the morning.
Now Bevin's got a 30% an approval rating under 30%.
But they don't care. They get their ideological policies pushed through, and look,
they got all their stuff.
Exactly. And what they want is they want to crush workers' rights, consumers' rights, women's rights, LGBTQ rights. They do. That's what they want. I mean, you look at Wagner. Wagner's an interesting character. He's not going to tell you how much he makes, but he's not going to raise the minimum wage. In fact, his minimum wage bill was so bad that not even the Republicans had the temerity to pass it and run on, hey, we raise the minimum wage. He wanted to raise it 50 cents a year for 3 years to $8.75. That was his, or actually $8.65, because the state's minimum wage is 10 cents lower. But they wouldn't even run that through because of how bad it was.
Oh my goodness, that's just such a joke.
But here again, I'm hoping Pennsylvania voters hear this and go, this guy's just too far out there. And this thing to me is one of those moments that I think can spark an interesting conversation. Because you think about, the guys who work for his main company, Penn Waste, which everyone knows that he owns. These guys are busting their behinds every day, working in grueling conditions in the heat and in the cold in the winter, dealing with our refuse, picking things up and taking them away, and not even being seen or heard for poor wages. And yet you've got this guy who's benefiting enormously from their blood, their sweat, and their hard work and their struggle. And to me, this should send them just running to the next union.
It absolutely should, and I can't think of anything more fitting.
No, you're right, and that's. I hope there's an organizing campaign firing up as we speak, because I think that's really a dumb thing he did.
Well, I'd like to think there is. I mean, his comment was almost tempting fate.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me. I did want to ask you about a couple other breaking news stories around Trump and D.C. getting away from baby Trump here in Pennsylvania. Lunacy, a former prosecutor, explained that Trump's acting like a mob boss. Is that right?
Yep, that's another one of my stories today. So basically, that was just he pretty much stunned the legal world by coming out and saying that he believes that flipping should be illegal. In other words, he believes it should be illegal for criminal suspects to cooperate with prosecutors.
Well, I guess if you're the one who's being flipped on, I would guess you'd be against it.
That's exactly right.
I mean, I would be if you were telling stuff about me. I'd be against it too, especially if I've got serious problems like he's got. Because you now even got some Republicans coming out and saying this doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't. And I said this earlier today, which is that I would love to see Trump in his next State of the Union address actually propose a bill to Congress to ban people from flipping in criminal cases. He could call it the Snitches Get Stitches Act.
There you go. I don't put it past him. And look, don't put it past his supporters to agree. I mean, I started the show off with saying, almost half of Republicans polled in this latest poll said that they believe the president should be able to shut down media outlets for bad behavior, whatever that means. I mean, his supporters are just, I don't know.
It's just eye-popping. And although I will say this, the one little ray of hope that I got from this week so far is the revelation that at least one of the jurors in the Manafort case was a hardcore red hat wearing Trump supporter who came into the trial convinced that Robert Mueller's investigation was a witch hunt, and in the end voted to convict Manafort on all 18 counts. She heard the evidence, and that was just above politics even for her.
Yeah, I mean, I read that story where she said, it was just overwhelming. And yet you hear the other story that there was one juror that kind of, mucked everything up, which is why they only came to 8 guilty verdicts instead of all 18.
I know. I would love to know what happened there.
Well, the first person to write the book, they're the ones going to make money, and then we'll find out.
That's true, I suppose.
And you got to wonder. I mean, because for me, I'll tell you, I thought Thursday, the first day that the jury had the case, I was going, by lunchtime they should be done, because the evidence was overwhelming. Every day you heard one more damning thing after another, and it seemed like a no-brainer. So I was like, Thursday, Friday goes by. I'm going, I wonder if Manafort, the Russians, somebody got to one of the jurors. And I guess maybe I watched too many movies, but that was where my mind was going.
Well, I mean, what strikes me as the truly amazing thing is that it took this long for there to be any sort of justice in the Manafort affair, because we've known who he is for years and years. And one of the big reasons is that we just don't have a real apparatus to fight white-collar crime in this country. Really, really rich, really connected people can basically do whatever they want.
No, you're absolutely right. And look, it's all about the green, man. And Manafort spread it around. And I remember it because I had gone to both of the conventions back in 2016. And, I was talking to people about Manafort. You go to the Republican conventions and, man, they thought he was a god. He's this money guy. He's this grand strategist. And you go to the Democratic side, and they still had him up on this god platform, but he was a criminal, and they knew for years he was a criminal, and were in awe of the fact that this criminal could get away with all of the stuff he was doing for years and years.
Just some of the stuff that he did is just on a staggering scale. I mean, it's pretty obvious that ridiculous suit collection, for instance, was some sort of way to get was just a ploy to get foreign money through in a way that nobody would look at it.
Yeah, good point. Or he just has really bad taste.
That's true too. But the depressing thing is that it is not at all unusual among foreign oligarchs. They have a huge racket where they just buy up U.S. assets so that they don't have to park their money here directly. I mean, you see it in real estate a lot.
Oh yeah.
It's at the point where there's like tons of luxury condos in our major cities changing hands in these sorts of transactions, while tons of homeless people are on the street.
No. We go down to Florida for Christmas every year for a couple of weeks, and the number of Russians that you see in South Florida, it was staggering to me. I was like, wow, entire condos, being bought up and empty, most of them. And it was one of those things where you go, that this is just a way to funnel money and launder money through real estate.
Well, in any event, it was definitely heartening to see Manafort get some real justice in this case. The question now is, how do we replicate it? How do we hold everyone accountable?
Yeah. So look, I'm happy that he's going to spend probably the good majority of the rest of his life in jail, and I'm hoping there's a whole perp walk parade behind him, because I'd be happy to spend a couple of tax dollars to build another wing onto San Quentin or somewhere to house these criminals. And I'm hoping that happens. I really am.
I concur.
Let me ask you, last story of yours that I wanted to talk about. Evidently, we found some Africans that Trump actually likes, South Africans.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, he really stepped in it with that one. It's just, you know, if you've been following, I mean, for those who've been following it, there's been a years-long conspiracy theory in white nationalist circles that South African farm attacks are essentially a plot to commit white genocide. I mean, and it doesn't matter that farmers of all races are getting attacked and that they're pretty much exclusively for economic reasons. But that none of that matters. It's all a grand conspiracy to displace white. And, you know, Trump is going to very dangerous ground here by lending legitimacy to this theory and bringing it into the mainstream. Although, to be fair, he didn't do that without help. It's pretty clear that he got this message from Tucker Carlson's show where they're promoting this lie all the time.
Doesn't that scare you to death that, you know, that the president of the United States watches that garbage?
It absolutely is. I mean, I will tell you this. I've actually, you know, in the course of my writing work, I've sometimes needed to watch the Tucker Carlson show, and that's not a part of my day I look forward to, because it's just staggering the plain-spoken, mind-numbing racism that comes out of that man's mouth.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's why people watch him, right?
That's right. I mean, honestly, at this point, I almost feel like he's more dangerous than Hannity. I mean, I've had to watch Hannity too. But he just sort of babbles at this point. Nothing he says is very coherent. Tucker Carlson is very coherent and very racist.
I've never actually watched his show, so I know
Consider
that
yourself lucky. You're not really missing anything of. And I mean, you're saving yourself a lot of headache by not watching it. But it's still important to know that this sort of stuff is going on, because apparently it's going right into the head of the president of the United States.
And I'm hoping he's not president for long, even though I'm not pro impeachment.
You and me both.
Even though I'm not pro impeachment. But, you know, maybe somebody cut the cable off. You know, maybe he runs our debt up so high that they cut the cable off, the lights. Who knows? Something's got to happen, Matthew.
Yes.
But I appreciate I appreciate the work that you do there, and I look forward to having you back again as more stuff breaks. You're doing fantastic work. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matthew.
It's great to be on your show, Rick.
Good stuff, man. And look, you should check out Matthew Chapman's work over at AlterNet. We'll get links out as he broke the story on Scott Wagner and of course the Africans that Trump seems to like, the South African ones. Very, very strange. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Don't really know, and I can't remember caring for an hour.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1900. That was the day that folk singer Malvina Reynolds was born to a Jewish family in San Francisco. Her parents were socialists and operated a tailor shop. Malvina learned the price of speaking out for what you believe in at a young age. Her parents opposed U.S. entry into World War I. Because of this, Malvina's high school would not issue her a diploma. She was able to still go to college at Berkeley, where she eventually earned her Ph.D. She married carpenter and labor organizer William Bud Reynolds. She became a prolific folk singer, playing around the Los Angeles area. During the 1960s, she wrote about songs supporting civil rights and labor rights. Her song, Free Enterprise, offers the lyrics, "The air you breathe is poison. The food you eat is worse. The dollars in your paycheck are pennies in your purse. There's nothing free about it. You pay at every turn, except the guys in Wall Street who have the stuff to burn. They had to make new brain machines to count their profits rise, but since there's always room for more, they can still make their profits soar. A little war does wonders for free enterprise." Perhaps her most well-known song is Little Boxes. The song was inspired by driving by hillside houses in Daly City, California. It talks about the conformity of middle-class suburbia.
They are put in boxes and they come out all the same. And the boys go into business and and marry and raise a family in boxes made of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
And a blue one and a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same.
The most important issues of the day. This is the Rick Smith. The most important issues of the day. This is the Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So Axios has reported that President Trump has blocked a plan to push prison and sentencing reform before the midterm elections, claiming, well, it's too politically difficult to endorse this close to the midterm elections. We just don't want to get into that before the election. Evidently, the bill might have reduced some mandatory minimum sentences for certain drug crimes, and it could have sent about 4,000 prisoners home. Now, with the collapse of the bill, you have the law and order hardliners like Tom Cotton and Jeff Sessions all tingly in the panties because this is a win for them. Anyway, let's find out what's going on around the world and in Washington, D.C. Bob Ney, Talk Media News. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So what do you think? Too politically charged to do this before? Because, hey, you might tick off some of those law and order voters.
Well, I'm a bit surprised this happened because the one thing is that Donald Trump had championed this issue and had continued to push it.
Yep, this was the major inroad into the African American community.
Right, and also on a personal level, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law's father, was in federal prison, as I have been in federal prison. And like anything, once I did time there in federal prison, I came out with a complete different look. And I mean, I'm out of there for a long time now, but I saw things that just really aren't good for the system. They don't help anybody. So I know Kushner's father had talked about that. So I'm kind of surprised that it took this turn. There must have been some people just going really crazy about this bill coming up before the election.
Well, I mean, you've got the law and order crowd, and I know a bunch of them who are like, they broke the law, let them rot in prison, and there should be no cable TV or no education or nothing. They should be locked like animals in cages. And because if we make it harsh enough, and here's the theory, if you make it harsh enough, if you make it bad enough and deplorable enough, people might not commit crimes. Are you not buying it?
No, I mean, in Morgantown Federal, where I was incarcerated, I think about 78% were minority or were drug offenders, and a great portion were minority. And but again, I think 78% were drug offenders, and so a lot of people, were also addicted to drugs and committed offenses. So you can incarcerate them unless you get some treatment. They would particularly probably do it again.
Yeah, I mean, well, wouldn't treatment be a cheaper option? I mean, locking people up, because if I'm not mistaken, it's like 30, 40 grand a year to lock somebody up.
55.
That high?
Yes, I think it's about 55 as an average. And look, there is a way to do it. If you have somebody that has a 10 or 11 year drug sentence, and by the way, a lot of these people, and there's different cases, they are not the big drug cartel guys or gals.
Right.
They're people that are addicts, and they got a long sentence, or they had a, lack of legal representation, or they cut a plea deal, whatever. So they end up in there a long time. But let's say somebody's sentenced to 7 years. So let's take an average of $40,000. That'd be about $300,000. And what you could do is put the individual in for a year's period of time, let's say, so that they get a, taste of incarceration along there with the beginning of treatment. Then when you bring them on the outside, if they slip, then you can, again, reincarcerate for a short period of time, with treatment and bring them out again. Now, I know this sounds like a revolving door, but in the end, you've got a better chance of a success rate and less money spent if we want to look at the economics of it.
Right. No, I mean, it makes sense to me. And the drug thing just, unless you're talking about, I think we lock up violent criminals. I think,
Sure.
And I know I get the back and forth from a whole bunch of people. Oh, all drug dealers are violent and it causes violent crime and all that. And maybe so. But, for the average guy, just trying to sell a little something to feed their addiction, I don't know that, life imprisonment after a couple of offenses is any good for society. And at 55 grand a head, I mean, we could most certainly just keep them in a hotel, I think, for the whole time and get them drug treatment or assign someone to walk around with them, make sure they don't do drugs.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's, like I said, there are ways. It'll take, prison reform to do it. And that's why I'm a little surprised that, obviously they're reacting. With the midterms coming up, a lot of people are doing things.
Now, you don't want to lose that law and order vote. We need the crime and punishment people to get out and vote. And also today, the big news, Duncan Hunter and his wife pled not guilty to falsifying financial records. And I love how they use the misappropriated or misusing $250,000 in campaign funds, or as it used to be when I was a kid, stealing. Evidently, they will remain free on bail, having posted $15,000 for him, $10,000 for her. And I'm going, wait a second, you stole $250,000. You get out on $10,000 bond, really?
Well, on the case, they had, obviously utilized the campaign funds for, a lot of things, dental work.
Yep.
The campaign law, because I used to oversee the Federal Elections Commission in our committee, and the campaign law is, you use the money for your furtherance of your political career and not for personal use. Now, don't get me wrong. The areas are gray a lot of times, no doubt about it. If you lease a car and it's used for campaign and you happen to use that car to get down to the grocery store, that's actually not illegal. It's de minimis use. But I'm just saying there's all kinds of different things. People do buy football tickets for contributors, for example. It may not look good, but they do that. In the cases I've read with he and his wife, and it was a lot of money, they had used it for clothes and shoes and then said it was going for wounded warriors when it didn't. And the other thing is they had, and this was kind of, look, everybody runs up against some money problems here and there, but they had like 1,000 overdrafts in a several year period of time. 1,000.
Yeah, they're just not good at math.
Right. So I think that from everything I saw, I don't think this is a small matter. I think that he's going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I think the dental work, you could make the argument that you can't have a bad smile on the campaign trail, and you need the whitening for the picture, whatever. I guess maybe you could make an argument for that, right?
Right, except not the root canals and other things. See,
for me, that was the part that got me. That was the part that caught me. All the other stuff, the rabbit on the the plane ticket for the rabbit and the ski the surf shop, all that other stuff. It is what it is. But the dental work, I'm going. You're a sitting congressman with federal benefits. If you have to steal campaign funds to get some dental work, maybe there's a problem that you should be addressing as a member of Congress and make sure that nobody has to steal from campaign funds or steal from somewhere to get dental work done. Just kind of a thought.
Yeah. Now that's a touchy seat too. The young man running is a pretty decent candidate. I'm trying to remember his name. Najir is his last name.
Yeah. I'm hoping. I didn't see it on the radar. Now it's on the radar. So.
Well, that and then the Collins seat in New York. They are trying. This is idiocy. I mean, talk about stupid politics. They're trying to land him, Collins, an appointed position where somebody has died or quit on the city council. What would you do that for?
Jeez. It's good to have friends in high places who look out for you. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and he's on the board of a company. I don't know.
It's crazy, just crazy. Let's get to the big story of the day. Evidently, if Trump is impeached, everything goes to hell in a handbag. We're all going to be standing around looking at each other, unemployed and broke.
Right. Even with Nixon, it was some of the economic problems in the market dropped, but that was not really due to Nixon, but it was due to global problems on oil. I think historically, if you look at the impeachment of Clinton, the world didn't end, and it's not going to end with Donald Trump.
Yeah, and look, I've said this before, and I said it at the beginning. I'm not on the impeachment bandwagon because I fear, I really do. I fear Mike Pence much worse because, and I think you know him, right?
Oh, yes, I served with Mike Pence, yes.
I think he's someone who understands the system. I think he's not someone who's going to rattle a lot of cages outwardly. I think behind the scenes, he's more dangerous than probably anyone I can think of because he is a theocrat. But I think he's dangerous because things will just happen as they're supposed to, and he knows how to grease the gears, and he knows how to do messaging, and things could be really bad, in my view, if Pence were in the Oval Office.
Well, Mike Pence, like any other member of Congress, they know how to run an office. Now, I know the White House is bigger, but they still know how to run an office, right?
Yep.
And they know how the system works, and you got to keep things going internally so it's all smooth. Pence obviously would not be subject to, tweeting all the time. He wouldn't be subject to, going into tirades on different things. He would look as a soft-spoken alternative. I would say that it gives Spence a big leg up.
No, I mean, and he could be, and I was talking to someone earlier today, and I said, my fear is Trump gets ousted. It's the most, tumultuous time. We're all ripped apart. Pence comes in as that grandfatherly figure and begins to try, pull people back together and reaches out to the left with a couple of little small things to make it look like, oh, we're going to try and come to the middle of the road. And then once everything calms down, bang, every crazy right-wing theocratic evangelical piece of model legislation that's ever been written slips through like grease on a hot fire.
Yeah, I agree. Pence would bring some stability due to his knowledge of the system.
Or do you think I'm off base? Do you think he would be an even-handed leader who would?
I mean, I think that his chances of success to, quote, calm the office down would be big because of what happened. Look, right now you don't. Let's think about it. When is the last time that we've heard that there was an eruption in the vice president's office? There was a firing. There was a this. I mean, think about it.
Nope. No, he's laying low. He knows his days are coming. He knows he's going to be sworn in there someday real soon. And you look, and you're right. He's going to keep under the radar. In fact, I haven't heard anything of him, other than maybe he said something at that was a little off at one of the prayer meetings or something. But I fear him more than anything. Scary times with him. Today, Jeff Sessions grew a set for a couple of seconds and fired back at Trump. What happened?
Well, Jeff Sessions, and I served in the Congress, of course, with him. He was in the Senate, I was in the House, and he had his pecking order in the Senate, and it was pretty well known as stand-up type of guy in the sense that he would speak out or he would hold his own, and he's been just a pinata punching bag for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Since the beginning.
Yep, since day one. And I have no idea how you take that.
And he did. I always wondered if he just really needed the job so badly to put up with all that. Now, Trump is almost to the point where the president's working himself up to fire Sessions. And that's the one thing, he is a creature of the Senate, Sessions is. And just today, Senator Collins and a few other senators are like, no, you will not fire Sessions to the president. This is where they'll bolt on him when it comes to, the long-term friendships they have with Sessions.
Yeah, I mean, I've been waiting for Jeff to, to stand up, grow a set, and maybe even start an investigation over this Cohen thing.
Well, he won't do that. But
no, he won't. But there's that point where there's always so much of what someone's willing to take, and I'm waiting for that to eventually blow up in Sessions.
Yeah, of course, there are things that he hasn't done that he knows the president wants him to do, and he hasn't done it. To sit on Mueller and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, he hasn't done that.
Going to see how this all plays itself out. And finally, a big fan of guns, are you?
Well, I've always been a big Second Amendment guy. I don't think that.
So should we have guns in the classroom?
I was going to say, I don't think we should use taxpayers' funds and fund them into the classroom. I saw that from DeVos, and I'm just wondering if, being Machiavellian, with everything that's gone on in the last 24 hours with Cohen and Manafort, I just wondered if they said, hey, why don't you talk about this today?
Yeah, we need a distraction.
I just wonder.
Break out the shiny stuff.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, when they say, well, nothing in the law that they're trying to use for the funding source prohibits this. Well, nothing in EPA law prohibits giving guns to people. So let's just fund it out of the EPA. I mean,
there you go.
They are stretching it on where they're trying to take it from. It'll never happen.
But I love the fact that they trotted it out today.
Oh, yeah. That's what I said. I'll be Machiavellian. It was done on purpose.
Oh, yeah, it was brilliant. But again, what it did, and all of my education friends are, we're not bodyguards, and we don't want them in the classroom, and, all of this stuff. And I'm going, mission accomplished. They got everybody talking about it.
Well, first of all, if there's, other ways that they've got to secure the schools, and doing it individually, and the training would have to be done, and teachers with the handguns on them, and I mean the entire ball of wax. When the Capitol was protected, when I was there, we didn't have individual members of Congress armed. We had security at the gate.
Right.
Well,
what I want. I want Betsy DeVos and all of the people pushing for this to have to go and inform the parents of the first kid who's shot in a classroom because the teacher accidentally dropped the gun, or it just went off, or kids were, wrestling around, or, whatever. Somehow some kid gets shot in the front seat of the classroom. I want them to go be the ones to inform the parents.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
It's a bad idea all the way around. But it is what it is. Bob, I appreciate the time, man.
Thank you, Rick.
Always good talking to our good friend Bob Ney, Talk Media News. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show.
But instead of running repeats, we've asked some go-to foreign policy experts what they'll be paying attention to in the weeks to come. Jeff Thale is the Vice President for Programs at the Washington Office on Latin America, and he's watching the Northern Triangle region of Central America, encompassing Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. It's citizens of these countries that constitute the bulk of those trying to reach the U.S. legally or illegally over the southern border.
One of the reasons for Northern Triangle migration is the lack of political stability, inability for people to trust that the institutions of the country work to provide them enough security that they can stay at home. You've been threatened by a gang. You don't believe you can go to the police to get protection. You don't believe the courts will do the right thing, all of that. All of that is linked to strengthening the rule of law, making the police work, all that. And it's also linked to the fight against corruption.
Corruption is a longstanding issue in the Northern Triangle, but two developments show the region could be at a crossroads.
In Guatemala, President Morales has continued to push back against this UN-sponsored commission investigating corruption and politically linked crimes. The commission has twice now opened investigations against the president himself, and the president has repeatedly and most recently threatened to change the mandate of the commission, have the head of the commission lose his legal status in the country. So there's an ongoing battle there. In El Salvador, last week, the Attorney General settled a plea bargain with a former president of the country. He got a 5-year sentence. He's paying back about 10% of the money he's accused of stealing. The big deal about it is, one, it's the first time the president has been not just indicted, but actually convicted. And two, he's got to cooperate with the Attorney General's office, and it opens up a whole spotlight on a range of corruption issues.
Luke Fargus, The United Nations.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
We want the world and we want it now. We're gonna take it anyhow.
the good thing is Donald Trump's actually thinking about being impeached. And in fact, some of the stories coming out of the White House, he's kind of freaking out about it. As he should, really. Although today he came out with this wonderful quote. Quote, "I will tell you what, if I ever got impeached, I think the markets would crash. I think everybody would be very poor, because without this thinking," he gestures to his head like he's the smart guy, you would see numbers that you wouldn't believe in reverse because of this. He's so smart. He did it all himself. That's the kind of rhetoric that you would get from a tin pot dictator somewhere where people are probably still starving and the economy is doing okay. Wages are actually going down. How is it that every economic model that I've ever seen on paper says that as unemployment goes down, wages go up? That as the amount of jobs out there exceed the number of people willing to take them, the ability to fill those jobs is directly related to the wages going up. Kind of curious how that works and how we're going in the opposite direction. Just kind of throwing that out there. But hey, maybe if we were impeached, we'd all be just standing around looking at each other like, what do we do now? If it weren't for Donald Trump, we would have never built, the Golden Gate Bridge. We'd have never built, the best infrastructure in the history of civilization up until that point. We would have never gone to the moon without Donald Trump. We would have never figured out how to put a plug in the bathtub to take a bath. We've never figured out any of that stuff. We wouldn't have figured out the wheel. There'd be no fire. We would know nothing. And in fact, when he's impeached, it all goes backwards and we just end up stupid. And finally, my last thought on this hour. Thanks, Rudy Giuliani, who is probably the worst attorney in the history of law. Evidently, according to Rudy, Trump actually sought out advice from lawyers on pardoning Paul Manafort. Now, according to Rudy, they counseled against it, but he threw it out there that Trump was even thinking about it, which has got to be just the dumbest thing you could possibly do outside of the thing he did the day before or the day before or the day before. If you were doing like a top 10 dumbest things, this would probably be, I don't know, 5th, maybe 6th. I hope Rudy's working pro bono. I really am. I'm hoping that this isn't costing we the taxpayers any money or anyone else for that matter. Just really bizarre. If you missed any portion of the program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you get the podcast. Quick break. Right back with hour 2. Stick around.
Controversial, thought-provoking, opinionated. Rick Smith.
The U.S. Postal Service has 30,000 outlets serving every part of America. It employs 630,000 people in good middle-class jobs, and it proudly delivers letters and packages clear across the country for a pittance. It's a jewel of public service excellence. Therefore, it must be destroyed. Such is the fevered logic of laissez-faire-headed corporate supremacists like the billionaire Koch brothers and the right-wing politicians who serve them. This malevolent gang of wrecking ball privatizers includes such prominent trumpeteers as Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, a former Wall Street huckster from Goldman Sachs, and Budget Director Mick Mulvaney, a former corporate-hugging Congress critter from South Carolina. Both were involved in setting up Trump's shiny new task force to remake our U.S. Postal Service. It's like asking two foxes to remodel the henhouse. Trump himself merely wanted to take a slap at his political enemy, Amazon chief Jeff Bezos, by jacking up the prices the postal agency charges to deliver Amazon's packages. The cabal of far-right corporatizers, however, saw Trump's temper tantrum as a golden opportunity to go after the Postal Service itself. So instead of simply addressing the matter of package pricing, shazam! The task force was trumped up with an open-ended mandate to evaluate, dissect, and restructure the People's Mail Service, including carving it up and selling off the parts. Who would buy the pieces? For-profit shippers like FedEx, of course, but here's some serious irony for you. The one outfit with the cash and clout to buy our nation's whole postal infrastructure and turn it into a monstrous corporate monopoly is none other than Amazon. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help stop this sellout, become part of the Grand Alliance to save our public postal service. www.agrandalliance.org.
What do the corporate powers from Wall Street to Walmart have in common? They hate the Hightower Lowdown. You can see why at www.hightowerlowdown.org.
Uncovering the con in conservatism. Rick Smith.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Oh, the fun, the joy. I think one of my favorite stories of the week, one of my favorite stories is of this evangelical pastor. This crazy right-wing pastor complaining about you really can't make this stuff up on any level. He was complaining that witchcraft was trying to take over the United States. That the witchcraft was going to take over the country, and he wanted people to pray for Donald Trump, but was doing it while speaking in tongues. So I'm like, wait a second, witchcraft speaking in... wow. And here to share some thoughts on that story and many others, the author of that story, Sarah Burris, reporter over at Raw Story. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me.
So am I getting this right? You've got this speaking in tongues pastor complaining about witchcraft and spooky things?
I guess. I mean, what's strange to me is that he didn't mention the word witch hunt. You know, I was shocked that he seemed to mention every other Trump talking point, but he did not mention the witch hunt. So I don't know. I've never seen anybody talk in tongues before, so that was a first for me. And it was fun. It was fun to watch. I was fascinated. And then I wondered if it was maybe a foreign language option at Liberty University.
I actually have seen a congregation go through this. And it was really the freakiest thing I've ever seen. I was back in high school, and a friend of mine, his parents went to some really bizarre, way out, kind of snake venom church. And it really freaked me out. And it was one of those things where going, I know Catholics are screwed up, but this is ridiculous.
Yeah, for real. Sometimes whenever I poke fun at my mom's pastor, I talk about dancing with snakes, and she gets really offended. And she's like, "We are not like that. How dare you?" And it's like, oh, heaven forbid I call the Baptist a snake wrangler.
I mean, when I first moved to Pennsylvania, I worked up in the hills at a trucking company up there, and all the coal crackers would come down, and the one guy I met used to go to one of these churches where they used to handle the snakes. And I asked him, I said, well, what happens if someone gets bitten? And he goes, well, they have the anti-venom in the back. And I'm going, well, what the hell's the point then? Isn't the point? Yeah. Isn't the point that it's God's will that you die, that you got bitten and then you die? Isn't that the point? It's how we thin the herd. And he's like, no, if God didn't want us to have the anti-venom, he wouldn't have let us create it. And I'm going, wow, there's a lot of gymnastics in that justification.
And what's crazy is this is the same religion that also is in favor of spiritual healing. So they don't believe in medicine. And it's like, if you are supporting the anti-venom, wouldn't you then support the medicine that would heal you from like cancer or measles or whatever?
Yeah. I mean,
right.
Yeah, look, when you get into religion, I generally don't like to get into, how crazy some of us are, but some of us are spooky freaking crazy.
Special people.
On both sides, though.
Oh, on both sides, right? There are good people on both sides.
Yes, there are, except the crazy ones. We got to get to the main story. It's not often that Trump trips over his pecker, and here we are.
Trump and Pecker are they have quite a bro job going on there. And Pecker really inserted himself into this situation by calling the special counsel, and I know that he's going to have a lot of hard things to say.
Oh, I bet you spent all day thinking that one up.
I spent most of today making up Pecker puns in my head, and
Trump's going to take quite a beating, right?
Right. Yeah. No, he's going to take quite a beating. Particularly after Pecker takes some time to loosen himself up with Manafort, and I mean, this could really blow.
Oh, for Trump, it really could. All over him.
All over him.
All over him. So what exactly is Pecker spewing?
So I think the story that we had heard whenever Pecker was first talking about the deal that he made with Karen McDougal is he said openly that he made this deal with her because he wanted to help Trump out for his election. Like, he said it in the press. It is out there. He has already come clean about it. So, and I feel like it wasn't the Michael Cohen tape that he released. Didn't they reference him? Our friend David?
Yes.
So this is one of those things where Pecker has a story to tell, and he's going to sing like a canary, and he's probably going to, talk about how he talked to Trump about this whole thing with Karen McDougal, and they coordinated on this or conspired, whatever you want to say. But I think the deeper thing with the Pecker is that he spends a lot of time with Trump. Like, this guy is one of Trump's BFFs. I wasn't just making a joke when I said a bro job. For real, these guys have known each other for like 30 years. He goes to Mar-a-Lago all the time. And so he's been involved in a lot of conversations with Trump. And you got to wonder, what all does he know? And it could be anything. It really could be anything.
No, and the reports are that, there are tons of stories that they sat on. And then, the National Enquirer doesn't do that very often. There are tons of stories that they sat on that they didn't print that, now, will there be a Trump edition?
Yeah, it's not just Karen McDougal. There's a lot of stuff. And then there are all the private conversations that they had. So, I mean, I want to know how David Pecker fits in with Cohen. And, maybe he's going to stick it to Trump.
No, I'm expecting it. Either way, it's a sticky situation.
It is. And it can be really hard.
Yeah,
Pecker could make things hard for Trump.
At some point, never mind. I'm done with that. I'm done with this. This is just bad. I feel terrible.
I know. Now you understand what the poor people that I work with have had to deal with all day long.
Because, I look at this and look, at the end of it, while there's a lot of fun here and there's some funny ha-ha stuff, this is deadly serious stuff. I mean, all of this cover up, all of this stuff was, and I go, would it have made any difference had we known about McDougal? Would it have made any difference if any of this stuff would have come out during the election? I don't even know, because, the people that I know who would have voted for him, he probably could have shot somebody on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff probably wouldn't matter. The thing that I found really interesting is they wrote right after Fox News did the interview with Manafort's juror. It was probably 11:30 last night, and I saw that and was just floored. And one of the things that she said is that as a Trump supporter, she, absolutely supports the president. She was proud to vote for him. She was really disappointed in Paul Manafort and what he did. And she doesn't hold Donald Trump responsible for what happened. And she said, as far as I'm concerned, unless he commits treason or kills a man, you know, I'm going to continue to support him. And I think, honestly, that's what it is for a lot of people. But at the same time, I don't think that that is the majority. I think that is a very, very loud minority. And I think there are a lot of people that are like, you know what? I don't want this drama. You know, you're not helping me in my daily life. My wages are stagnating, or my farm is in trouble. You know, stuff like that. That's what Democrats are actually talking about on the campaign trail. We can complain about Donald Trump, but that's not going to put food on somebody's table.
No,
so,
you're absolutely right. And the hope is that the Democrats run on how they're going to make people's lives better, and not so much about Trump. I'm hoping that, you know, because I've had a bunch of people say, well, we need to impeach, and I'm going, well, let's hold off on that. Because how about you? I'm not on the impeachment bandwagon. Are you?
I can't decide, because I honestly could go either way. If we did impeach him, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, would it happen like what happened with Clinton, where it'll seem really transparent that this is politically motivated, and would he end up having a better job approval than when he started with it? The difference is that Donald Trump has like a 38% job approval, and when they started the impeachment proceedings with Bill Clinton, he had like, I think it was a 58 job percent.
Yeah, I thought it was like 60, and it went up. It actually went up.
Yeah, and it just went up and up and up. So I think that's the big difference. There are no coattails for a lot of Republicans for Donald Trump. And I think after the midterms, then we'll start to see, you know, when half of Congress is gone.
Right.
If a bunch of people lose, then these Republicans are going to be like, nah, I'm out. Because then it'll be about self-preservation.
Right. And then I think the Democrats are going to have to block impeachment simply because I don't want Mike Pence as president.
Yeah, I don't want Mike Pence as president, but I think, honestly, Mike Pence knew about a lot of sketchy stuff that was going on. He was the head of the transition team, so I don't know how he didn't know about a lot of stuff going on. If we impeach Donald Trump, I think hearings need to begin on what Mike Pence knew and when he knew it. Because I don't think that this stops at Donald Trump.
No, I hope, at least I hope not. I've been saying that I'm ready to pay for a parade as long as it's a perp walk parade. We start marching some of these criminals out, march them right down Pennsylvania Avenue, you know, and so we can all, you know, mock them and you know, throw things at them, and then right into jail. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and I don't think Mike Pence could ever get elected. I mean, his own state was trying to get rid of him. His own party doesn't like him. So he's been a loyal lapdog to Donald Trump for the last year and a half, and I want to know how far that actually goes.
Yeah,
what all that included.
No, I mean, I want to know exactly what's going on all of this. I mean, I think we really need to get to the bottom of what Russia did, what they got away with on both sides. If the Democrats were doing it too, and if there was something there, I think you've got to be completely transparent, and you got to go after it so that it doesn't happen again, so that we don't have this constant turmoil and this constant tearing us apart every election cycle, questioning the sanctity of the ballot box.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I want Democrats to, one of the first things that they do is make some kind of either fund that they can give to states to help them secure their ballots, or nationalize voting and say, all right, these are the national rules. Every state will comply with it. Every voting machine has to have a paper trail. You have to provide a paper ballot if somebody wants it. I mean, I would love all of these things to happen. And I think it's, you know, people have proven they don't have the resources. States do not have the resources to deal with this. So I think the federal government needs to step in and either pony up with some cash or, you know, figure out a solution for all of it. And that's a big thing that I think Democrats could do if they took the Congress.
Now, look, even if for me, if you're just going ripping pieces of paper and writing it on there,
Right.
checking the piece of paper. I mean, at some point, we've got to go back to ensuring that every vote is counted and every vote matters, and enough with these electronic voting machines. Look, if you have to have them so you do a quick count for the night of, so we can go to bed on time, great. But there should be a piece of paper associated with it, and that is the official count, and that's the official ballot, not the gadget.
Yeah, I got no problems with maybe it taking a couple of days for us to count some votes. If we
we can't do that as a country. We're incapable of. Look, you look at the guy in the drive-through at the McDonald's. If there are two cars in front of him, man, he's zipping out of the line.
I'd rather us be right
I'm with you.
than us, than it be.
Right no, I'm right there with
something
you.
sketchy.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. Evidently, New York Times reporter thinks it's a great idea that Fox News is actually helping the country by interviewing Trump and making him feel at home and comfortable.
That was one of those weird things that I heard, and I wasn't really paying attention, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, what? Did he just say that? And then I ran it back on the DVR and listened to it, and I thought, that's actually really smart. Because, and he described it perfectly, when Donald Trump is sitting down with a Fox News person, he feels really comfortable, he feels really safe in his own, habitat or whatever. And he feels fine saying whatever the hell he wants. And the result is that he cops to a lot of stuff. So,
it's like being
Fox
it's like being at the
Please.
cocktail party.
Keep going, right? More interviews. I would love many, many more interviews.
Here's some more rope.
Exactly,
going.
right? Like Fox News is the one that's braiding the rope that he's going to tie himself with.
And they don't even know they're doing it. That's the weird part about it.
Yeah, that's the crazy part, is that they see themselves as a a lot of people call it state-run media. I think I think it was Nick Confessori who said that it's more like media-run state, that they are the ones that are really the puppet masters for Donald Trump. And certainly Hannity is that guy, but they're basically telling him what to think and what to do. And we've talked about it before, where people will look directly into the camera and have a message to Donald Trump on their show, which is absurd and frightening on so many levels. But, if they want to make Trump feel very comfortable enough to confess to a lot of high crimes, then feel free.
No, I'm all in favor of it. Let's give him his own show. I mean, I think that's what he really wants. I don't think he wants to be president. I think he wants his own reality show.
I would be fine with that. If he wants to leave the presidency and have his own show on Fox News, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I'm
give him two shows.
Yeah, there you go. We'll just give him his own channel.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I got to ask you about Duncan Hunter. I wanted to get your thoughts on the charges against Duncan and his wife for, I love the language they use, misappropriating about $250,000.
Oops, I misappropriated these funds. My bad. Like, you don't lose $250,000 in between the cushions of your couch. That's not the way it works. Not like stuffed in the ashtray of your car. Like, no. And that's exactly what he's charged with, and allegedly he totally did this. Allegedly. But I love the stories about what the mood was like in the courtroom, that the two of them came in, the husband and wife, with their own lawyers, and they didn't look at each other and they didn't talk to each other. And it's like, oh, that's something that's probably difficult for them right now.
Well, you got to wonder which one of them is the spendthrift, because evidently they had like 1,000 overdrafts. So somebody's spending like a drunken sailor on leave. And from what reports is, I don't know which one of them it would be. It's probably him, because I hear some stories that, he frequents a number of bars and gets kind of rowdy and loud and drunk and, all of that stuff.
Maybe. And then there was the $600 seat on the plane for the bunny. So maybe the bunny has a drinking problem that we don't know about.
Or maybe they just wanted to make sure they wanted to make sure the bunny didn't die, because when I was a kid, when the bunny died, that was trouble.
Yeah. For real. I mean, I was thinking maybe the bunny was in business class, or like, how does that work? Does the bunny $600 to have like a little? If you have a cat or a small dog with you, you don't pay $600 for the cat to have its own chair. Like the cat goes under the seat.
I've
I've
never seen anyone travel with a pet. I have since I used to I drive for a postal carrier. I have seen them take their animals to like the air to the air freight area and put them in crates to be put on the underside of the plane. I've never actually seen someone with a dog in the plane.
I've seen them before. I fly a lot on Southwest though, so I feel like it's sort of, puppies, kittens, and crying babies. So. Alrighty.
All right. So they had a seat right there for the rabbit. All right, good. My favorite one was the dental work. You would think somebody with that kind of money, that kind of a gig would have good dental insurance. But
yeah, right. You would think.
Not.
I mean, this is federal insurance, but evidently not. I mean, what's strange to me is I have to wonder: is he writing stuff off of his taxes? Like, is he writing off some kind of eye cream because he has to do, speaking engagements on TV, and so he's got to like watch out for the crow's feet? Or is that what this is? Is he like, I gotta get my teeth capped because I gotta do TV or something? Like, what is that about?
I mean, it could be all of that.
It could be. It really could be all of it.
Hey, look, they hate government, so they're going to cheat where they can. And finally, Rudy. Were you surprised today that Rudy came out and admitted that Trump had actually asked legal advice on pardoning Manafort?
I'm not shocked. I mean, Trump already came out with it in that Fox News interview. He said that he was talking about pardoning Manafort. So I think Rudy was like, well, he said it, then I can talk about it. I think the difference is that Rudy's really dumb about what he says, and he doesn't take into consideration a lot of actual legal stuff before he opens his mouth. He just seems like the worst possible lawyer that you could ever hire. I would trust somebody on TV or somebody literally chasing an ambulance better than I would trust Rudy. The Lincoln lawyer, I would trust the Lincoln lawyer. I would trust Matthew McConaughey playing the Lincoln lawyer more than I would trust Rudy Giuliani.
But he was America's mayor.
And oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, well, I'm never a fan of Rudy, never liked him in any capacity, and this is just I hope he's working pro bono. I hope we're not paying for this bad advice. And lastly, any story we missed that you're particularly fond of this week?
Oh gosh,
so many.
I think there really are so many. The pastor really was my favorite. I cannot get over that pastor. And the thing that's interesting is that he is not the only pastor. We write about these pastors a lot. And I find them, gosh, especially when you get close to major holidays, there's probably like 2 or 3 a week that we can find some crazy idiot. And it seems like they are always the ones who want to be on camera. They're the ones who want to film it and stick it on YouTube or stick it on Facebook. And I'm like, well, why? I have questions. So I don't get it. But Rudy sounds like the same kind of guy, honestly.
Yeah, well, the religious people are a little scarier to me. This using God to line their pockets and that the fact that people actually follow them scares me even more.
I feel like that's what Rudy is doing. His God is just Donald Trump.
There you go. Or never mind. Sarah, always fun talking with you. I appreciate it.
Have a lovely weekend. And if you have any Pecker puns, please, everybody tweet them to me.
We will stuff your box. Thanks so much.
Thank
her email box, of course. Wow. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much, Sarah. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day the U.S. Congress approved the formation of the Commission on Industrial Relations. In the early 1900s, the terrible work conditions and entrenched resistance to union organizing had led to increased labor unrest. In 1910, 2 union members in San Francisco bombed the Los Angeles Times building, killing 20 people. The public outcry led officials in Washington to decide they needed to get serious about investigating the reasons behind the mounting anger of working people. The commission included 9 members, 3 workers, 3 employers, and 3 community members. The leader was Frank P. Walsh, a labor lawyer from Missouri. Led by Walsh, from 1913 to 1915, the commission embarked on a sweeping investigation of the conditions of work in the United States. They conducted 740 interviews that took them 154 days to complete. Interviewees included IWW leader Big Bill Haywood, labor hellraiser Mother Jones, and champion of working people lawyer Clarence Darrow. The commission investigated the Paterson, New Jersey silk mill strike and multiple other work actions. For 3 days, the commission grilled John D. Rockefeller on the Ludlow Massacre. The result was an 11-volume compilation of testimony. 100,000 copies of a shorter final report were published. The final report described the poor working conditions at many job sites and the brutal repression of the labor movement. It critiqued the treatment of agricultural workers. Predictably, many found fault with the commission's findings. The New York Herald called the commission's chairman Walsh a Mother Jones in trousers. Despite these critics, the comprehensive report stood as a powerful, detailed review of the conditions faced by thousands of working people every day. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com. So the more that comes out about the situation down in Georgia, we've been talking about this for a couple of days. Originally, they wanted to close 7 of the 9 polling places in Randolph County, Georgia, claiming that it was because of the Americans with Disability Act. Then they purged like 561,000 voters from the state's voting rolls. And now we find out, about the Randolph County thing. Evidently, this is now the story, and it's always the story that I love. It's always, it's what they've spent a bunch of time dreaming up to CYOA. Evidently, Randolph County lawyer Tommy Coleman sent a letter to the Associated Press stating that they had hired a consultant, this guy named Mike Malone, and it was his idea. It's all him. And that they've fired him and that they've given him $2,200 for his consulting fee, and now it's moved on down the road. You can't make this stuff up. Now, what I didn't find out is, will those 9 polling places remain open? Because, hey, we're not too far away from the November election. So what you've already done is you've created dissension already. You've created misinformation already. You've created tension and now and busy work for Democrats and the campaigns there to make sure that all their voters know where the polling places are. And this is all by design. But this is just, this is just the latest and numerous excuses and nonsense. But I thought I'd throw that out there. It was a consultant's idea. It was his idea. It was his idea. Him. Blame him. Also, the Trump administration has blocked the Secure Elections Act. You may remember back in December, James Lankford, the Republican from Oklahoma, he introduced the Secure Elections Act. It was co-sponsored by Kamala Harris and Amy Klobuchar on the left, and on the right, Lindsey Graham and Susan Collins. And evidently on Wednesday, it was supposed to go before the Senate Rules Committee, where it would be marked up and it would be sent on. And Senator Roy Blunt, who Republican from Missouri, who is the chairman of that committee, was ready to go forward on it. And then all of a sudden, well, nothing. And canceled, evidently. No bill, no going anywhere. And it was expected to come in, and I think I talked about this the other day. It was expected to be voted on in October, just in time to help us not deal with anything in the election. Evidently dead now. And they're claiming maybe after the election, like I said the other day. So maybe, and I was thinking about this, as Sarah was talking, maybe Trump listens to this program. Maybe he got an idea of, we need to cancel this because, hey, cheater's going to cheat, man. And there that is. Just amazing. Just amazing. Amazing what these people will do. Understand, our ballot box, never in my lifetime have I had less faith in our votes being counted. And, I'm someone who likes to believe in institution, and I like to believe that people are good and decent and honest, and that you're going to do the right thing for the sanctity of the ballot box and for democracy and high ideals. The fact that we can't get this fixed and we can't get this right, the fact that as a country universally, Tea parties and far left and conservatives and liberals and Greens and libertarians and everybody should be able to come together on this issue and say, you know what? We want clean, fair elections. We want to make sure that every vote is counted, that every vote matters. And I know that's not the Republican line because they know that they're not the majority. They know they've got to come up with games. They need to rig elections. They need to gerrymander. They need to suppress votes. They need to steal votes. They have to do that in order to maintain power because they're badly outnumbered. So maybe I get it. Maybe it is that simple. Anyway, going to take a quick break. When we come back, going to talk a little bit about the Supreme Court nominee, the confirmation hearings, and what needs to be done to stop Brett Kavanaugh from sitting on the U.S. Supreme Court, especially given the fact that, well, there's a lot of questions around whether Trump's going to be in office very soon. And it'd be the Supreme Court that would be overhearing some of it, at least the justice anyway. Quick break, right back.
Making the blue blood see red. The Rick Smith Show.
Hurricane Lane is a very serious storm.
Hawaii braces for rare impact from powerful hurricane.
I'm getting rid of some of these ridiculous rules and regulations which are killing our companies, our states, and our jobs.
EPA admits Trump's replacement for the Clean Power Plan will kill thousands of Americans. Plus,
the ruling by the D.C. Circuit Court counters efforts under the Trump administration to delay environmental regulations first introduced by former President Barack Obama.
Some good news. The Trump administration keeps losing environmental court cases.
All of that good news and bad straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
We're canceling Obama's illegal anti-coal destroying regulations.
Oh, shut up. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I hope our friends listening in Hawaii have battened down the hatches. It looks like this storm could be pretty bad.
Yes, Hawaii Governor David Ige has issued an emergency proclamation closing schools and mobilizing resources in preparation for significant impacts from powerful Hurricane Lane, which could potentially make a rare direct hit on the island chain. Hurricane Lane has already entered the record books. Lane reached Category 5 on Tuesday, becoming only the second Category 5 hurricane in recorded history to pass within 350 miles of of the state. That's according to the National Weather Service.
So this is very rare that Hawaii gets hit by hurricanes at all, correct?
That is correct.
And so I know there are actually not enough storm shelters in Hawaii, so we're just hoping everyone can stay safe over the next few days.
Meanwhile, we now have more information on the Trump Environmental Protection Agency's proposal to replace the Clean Power Plan, President Obama's first ever carbon emission standards for U.S. power plants. The Trump scheme is another attempt to bail out the polluting coal industry. So, of course, they're going to call it the Affordable Clean Energy Rule. But Conrad Schneider, advocacy director of the nonprofit group Clean Air Task Force, tells the Green News Report that the Trump EPA's own data outright states that the Trump plan will actually harm more Americans by increasing air pollution.
They admit that the change from the Obama plan to their proposal would result in 1,400 unnecessary premature deaths per year by 2030. So that's thousands and thousands of Americans who would die prematurely under the Trump plan, whose lives would have been saved under the Obama plan.
Just to be clear, the EPA's mandate is to protect public health. But wait, there's more. Remember how the Trump administration recently proposed weakening vehicle mileage and emissions standards?
I do.
Internal emails show the administration had been warned by its own transportation experts that the rollback would actually increase annual highway deaths. Top officials knew that and proposed it anyway.
So they know their new plan for coal plants is going to kill people. They know their new scheme to decrease mileage efficiency standards will kill people. And yet the Trump administration proposes this anyway?
Yes, they do.
Who exactly do they think the Environmental Protection Agency is supposed to protect?
But there is some good news. In just the last few weeks, the federal courts have delivered scathing rebukes to the Trump administration's efforts to roll back environmental protections. We already told you about the federal appeals court ordering the Trump administration to ban all uses of the toxic pesticide chlorpyrifos within 60 days. Then a federal judge in Montana dealt yet another setback to the controversial Keystone XL pipeline from Canada. The judge ordered the Trump State Department to do a new full environmental impact study on the pipeline's revised route, which will further delay construction. Then a district court in South Carolina overturned the administration's attempt to delay the Obama-era Waters of the United States rule for failing to follow public comment procedures, also known as the Clean Water Rule. It is now in effect, protecting the drinking water in 26 states. Then the D.C. Court of Appeals ordered the administration to immediately implement Obama's chemical safety rule for chemical facilities that were put in place after the deadly 2013 West Texas fertilizer explosion. The court said the Trump EPA delay, quote, makes a mockery of the statute. And then the D.C. court also rejected the EPA's bid to stall rules governing toxic coal ash waste ponds, agreeing with environmental groups that the Obama-era regulations on coal ash waste do not go far enough to protect drinking water. It's kind of weird that losses for the EPA are now considered a win for the environment and public health, but here we are.
Here we are, and it's a reminder how the constitutional Article 3 courts right now are saving us, and why it's so important that folks pay attention to what may be about to happen on the U.S. Supreme Court, who could overturn all of those rulings if Brett Kavanaugh is seated on the court. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us worldwide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Forever call our brothers and our sisters, and are you and I aware? You and I both know that we can't rely on it. The time is prime, planets aligning, no mistaking. For union resurrection, the anger has awakened. The sleeping giant, come on, yeah, we can do it. We need to revive, re-amp, and re-up the labor movement.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, ricksmithshow.com. So, yesterday we talked about Susan Collins met with Kavanaugh, went along with what he believes in decided law. He's just like John Roberts, Mr. Balls and Strikes. And again, I gotta go back to, I don't know what game he was playing, but you look at all the decided law that they've up and thrown out the window. I don't know that if I were Susan Collins or sitting in her place, that I would buy that decided law argument. And that's one of the things about Kavanaugh that scares me, because like Roberts, I think ideologically, they've already got their minds made up. And here to share some thoughts on the Kavanaugh confirmation, which starts the day after Labor Day if the Republicans get their way, I've asked Juanita Tolliver to come talk with us. She's the director of campaigns at the Center for American Progress. Juanita, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, thanks for having me.
So, I'm looking at Susan Collins, who is kind of, one of the key players in all of this, as a somewhat moderate Republican, as a pro-choice Republican. To me, she's kind of the linchpin in this. Where she goes, I think the Democrats will maybe follow. Those couple of red state Democrats might follow. Are you buying the decided law argument?
I mean, I think Collins recognizes that she holds a lot of sway here, and so folks are going to be watching her. And I've actually talked to a few Mainers who are losing confidence in the fact that she may not defend their rights, whether that's to accessing abortion care or health care, and with folks living with pre-existing conditions. And folks in Maine are expecting her to step up to the plate and do the right thing and vote no against Kavanaugh.
Yeah, there was just that poll that came out, I think it was yesterday, which is why I was talking about it, where almost half of the people there want her to vote against him. And if she votes for him, I think the poll went, if she votes for him and he overturns Roe, like 53% of the people polled said they wouldn't vote for her. So, I mean, Maine's one of those states that, it's kind of a, one of those middle ground states where this could throw that issue back into play for her.
Exactly right. And she can't ignore it, right? Like, I feel like in previous Supreme Court votes, like, she has confirmed some anti-choice justices, and ultimately Mainers are saying, don't do this again, and if you do it again, we're going to hold you accountable in the polls. Yeah, but here's the thing, this is what worries me, is that I look at Susan Collins, who plays this role, who puts herself in this spotlight, and then ultimately does exactly the opposite of what she should be doing. I think about the tax bill where, there were a bunch of pledges that were supposedly made to her that, they weren't going to do that. There was some stuff on healthcare that, I guess she wasn't going to get that either. It just seems like she's a really bad negotiator, and a really bad, I wouldn't want her as a lawyer writing things down for me. Well, honestly, I think she doesn't need to negotiate anything here. All she needs to do is listen to her constituents. They're saying loud and clear and sharing stories, whether that's in op-eds or calls to her office, do not vote for Kavanaugh. It's clear what Mainers want, and she's just got to listen to her constituents on this one.
Yeah, I mean, do you buy the decided law argument out of him? I mean, because I don't think there's anything.
Of course not. Why would I buy a decided law argument out of him when Trump only promised to nominate justices who would gut Roe, who would overturn the Affordable Care Act? Like, I don't buy any of it. Honestly, I think he'd be the nail in the coffin on a couple of major issues that would affect our society. And as a woman, that's really, really terrifying.
So is this the main issue for you on Kavanaugh's nomination?
I think it's one of the main ones, right? Like, he's bad for health care. He's bad for women's rights. But honestly, I'm zooming out a little bit to this week's most recent event, right? Like, I don't think his nomination should be even considered, considering that Trump was recently implicated in federal crimes.
Yeah, but I said that about Gorsuch as well, because I was predicting he's going to be indicted on federal crimes, and he shouldn't be allowed to put anyone forth. But do you think anyone's do you think the Democrats are going to stand together? Because, my fear is you got those handful of red state Democrats who are like, hey, I need to get reelected. I need to look like I'm not in the Schumer Pelosi crowd. Do you think the Democrats steal the spine?
I think they definitely have the spine, and when push comes to shove, we'll see how they vote. And honestly, Schumer has already come out saying, right, exactly what you said. Trump should not be allowed to put up a Supreme Court nominee, especially with those recent indictments and guilty charges and guilty pleas from his personal lawyer and his former campaign chairman, right? Like, if anything, the hearings need to be paused. His consideration and nomination, Kavanaugh's nomination, needs to be on pause. And we saw that from Schumer. We also saw it from Senator Juanita, who went a step further and even canceled her meeting with Kavanaugh this week.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty incredible. Just saying, nope, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. We shouldn't be moving forward. And look, we've now set precedents. You have, Neil Gorsuch sitting in the stolen seat that should have been Merrick Garland's. The Republicans ran in almost an entire year of blocking Merrick Garland's nomination and his confirmation. Precedence has been set. The Republicans made the argument we should decide at the polls. Now we have the McConnell rule, and I think we should be following that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just want to get back to the fact that Democrats and any senators, nor the public, have been able to see Kavanaugh's White House records from when he was there. 98% of his White House records are being withheld from the public. More than 85% are being withheld from the Senate. And honestly, the Judiciary Committee that's supposed to be hearing hosting hearings on his nomination right after Labor Day are waiting to see these documents, even pre-screened documents. But Senate Republicans are just trying to rush this nomination through without seeing any of his record at all. And that begs the question, Rick, what are they hiding?
Yeah, what's in those records? And look, for someone who's got an extensive background, and I think it was Dick Durbin who called him the Forrest Gump of politics, because Kavanaugh's been everywhere. Wherever there's been a problem, he seems to be somewhere in the mix.
Yeah, I think he's come up, whether it's been on whether or not a future president could refuse to enforce the Affordable Care Act. He's been involved in a 3-judge panel that temporarily blocked a migrant teenager from accessing abortion care. He even argued that people with disabilities could be forced to undergo elective surgeries, including abortions, without consent in the D.C. Circuit Court. Like, he's definitely a problematic candidate, and that's not even the tip of the iceberg based on the paperwork and documents that the public and the Senate has not been able to see.
See, and that begs the question of, you see just how extreme some of these justices are. You see how extreme the Republican Party has gotten. And I truly don't believe that they're indicative of we the people as a whole. I think we've gotten into this team sport mentality, and things have been so badly gerrymandered and just all the shenanigans that have gone on, that as a country, we're kind of center left, but as a political machine, we seem to be extreme right.
And following the trend of Trump right now, and the fact that he's been able to handpick a Supreme Court nominee who would essentially serve as a get-out-of-jail-free card for all of his corrupt behaviors and actions is truly problematic.
Well, I mean, if you were Trump, wouldn't you want somebody there who was on your side, someone who was loyal to you?
Of course I would, and that is why he should not be allowed to pick a Supreme Court justice right now, having been implicated in federal crime.
Especially, after Tuesday and Michael Cohen saying that he was directed by Trump to pay off the porn star mistress.
Exactly right. He acted in coordination with and under the direction of a federal candidate. Like, Cohen wouldn't just say that, and prosecutors wouldn't buy it if they didn't have the evidence that proved it. And so, honestly, the plea agreement from Cohen and Manafort's guilty verdict are game changers. And honestly, Trump is an unindicted co-conspirator based on those statements. So regardless of the nominee, these circumstances should disqualify him from choosing a Supreme Court justice right now.
No, and this is where I think the Republicans need to stand up and speak out. And I'm hoping come November, and this is where my mindset has been for a while, the hope is come November, we as a country look at just how extreme the Republican Party has become, how dysfunctional Trump has been, how this administration has been one of the most kleptocratic in the history of this country. And go to the polls, and it's a bloodbath, and we begin to take back through the channels of the ballot box and governance instead of an impeachment. I'm not on the impeachment wagon yet. I've taken some shots for that, but I'm not there yet. Even though
and I think that's fine. I think that's fine to not be on the impeachment track. But you're absolutely right about November, because we have a crop of Democratic challengers out there who are the alternative to this culture of corruption perpetuated by Trump, who are not agreeing. They're rejecting corporate tax money. They're rejecting a lot of the ties to special interests that incumbent Republicans have been entrenched in and been prioritizing those special interests over the needs of their constituents. So I can't wait for November to be that kind of check on this administration and that check on incumbent Republicans and special interests.
So as you're in, because I know you were also in Alaska, you're also talking to people in Alaska as well as Maine. What are they telling you overwhelmingly?
I think in Alaska, it's the same thing, the same message from Murkowski. And I actually talked to a minister in Alaska who has counseled patients through sad, tragic situations where they did have to seek abortion care in life or death situations. And as a minister, she is wholly supportive of the fact that women need access to those rights and reproductive rights, and is urging Murkowski to vote no on Kavanaugh. It's plain and simple. These senators just need to listen to their constituents and prioritize their needs over anything else. They understand what power they have in this nomination process, and they need to vote no. And honestly, all senators, based on Trump's recent allies being indicted and making guilty pleas, need to just press pause on this nomination process in general, to come up for air, reassess whether or not he should even be able to nominate someone, and then if they decide that he is, wait for the record. Wait till you know exactly what's in this nominee's history so you can make an informed decision.
No, I think the Republicans are going to try and ram this through as fast as possible because they don't want to get to the midterms. Because I think if this becomes a midterm election issue, a lot of Republican senators could lose their seats, and this could become very interesting come January. Or they ram it through after the in the lame duck.
I think they're going to try to ram it through no matter what. But this is where I think Democrats need to hold firm and really just pay attention to constituents' needs and be responsive to that. Whether they're in red states, blue states, wherever, I think any elected official needs to listen to their constituents and vote no on Kavanaugh.
Is there a way forward? Is there a way to block this that you see?
I think the more we have senators, especially Democratic senators, calling for this process to be paused indefinitely, I think the more we have senators waking up to the culture of corruption surrounding Trump and his implication in federal crime, there's a way for people to stand up to be a check on Trump and not just push through and rubber stamp this nominee, for sure.
And who does that run through? I mean, there's obviously the talk of the four Democrats who are in red states. The woman from Missouri, you got Heitkamp, you got Donnelly, you got Manchin. If you can hold them and pull just either Murkowski,
Collins, Murkowski, exactly right. It's a team effort here.
That could that hold it up?
I think that definitely could hold it up. But also, folks just need to be reminded about how problematic this nominee is and how unpopular he is. I think he's the most unpopular Supreme Court nominee in over 30 years, based on his views on presidential powers and his views on whether or not a president can be subpoenaed. Folks just need to connect the dots on why Kavanaugh is a get-out-of-jail-free card for Trump and block the process.
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the big concerns that I have is his disdain for regulatory oversight and basically governance and government at any level.
And his rejection of being a check and balance, right? Like he does not respect that, and that's really, really a dangerous person to have on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and it's scary to me because there's so many issues, and I know Roe is getting the mass of the attention. But it's so many: workers' rights, consumers' rights, civil rights. You go down the list. I mean, you're talking about the end of LGBT rights in this country. You're talking about we become. I fear we become that police state that we're kind of leaning towards. You look at some of the things that are happening in China, and you look at some of the things that could be happening here. Having him on the court just scares me to no end.
And it's going to be a dangerous time for any individual who is living their lives in their full truth, and that's what he is a threat to, and that's why it's an indiscriminate threat. And I speak not only as a woman, but just as someone who, knowing that if I were to have a child, this Supreme Court nominee would impact their lives for the next generation, the next 30, 40 years. Yeah, and that's something that can't be ignored. This is a lifetime appointment that needs to be taken seriously.
So what do you want people to do? Last question. What should people be doing? What's the action? What's the command?
Call your senators. Tell them to vote no on Kavanaugh. Join the nationwide efforts on Sunday, the 26th, and get out to your senators' offices. Join local protests and events, and call your senators. You can also tell your stories through op-eds or LTEs, but number one, call your senators.
Call early, call often, and you don't even have to be really loud.
Exactly right. Make your voices heard. Call your senators and visit toolkit.org if you need any directions or help on how to do that.
And we'll make sure we get a link out so people can take a look at it. Juanita, I appreciate the time, the passion, the thoughts. Keep up the fight, and best to you.
Thanks so much, Rick.
Good stuff. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Are you going to be out on Sunday? I'd love to hear where you're going to be. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
This broadcast is on holiday until September 10th, but instead of running repeats, we've asked some go-to foreign policy experts what they'll be paying attention to in the weeks to come. Jeff Thale is the Vice President for Programs at the Washington Office on Latin America, and he's watching the Northern Triangle region of Central America, encompassing Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. It's citizens of these countries that constitute the bulk of those trying to reach the U.S. legally or illegally over the southern border.
One of the reasons for Northern Triangle migration is the lack of political stability, inability for people to trust that the institutions of the country work to provide them enough security that they can stay at home. You've been threatened by a gang. You don't believe you can go to the police to get protection. You don't believe the courts will do the right thing, all of that. All of that is linked to strengthening the rule of law, making the police work, all that. And it's also linked to the fight against corruption.
Corruption is a longstanding issue in the Northern Triangle, but two developments show the region could be at a crossroads.
In Guatemala, President Morales has continued to push back against this UN-sponsored commission investigating corruption and politically linked crimes. The commission has twice now opened investigations against the president himself. And the president has repeatedly and most recently threatened to change the mandate of the commission, have the head of the commission lose his legal status in the country. So there's an ongoing battle there. In El Salvador, last week, the attorney general settled a plea bargain with a former president of the country. He got a 5-year sentence. He's paying back about 10% of the money he's accused of stealing. The big deal about it is, one, it's the first time the president has been not just indicted, but actually convicted. And two, he's got to cooperate with the Attorney General's office, and it opens up a whole spotlight on a range of corruption issues.
Luke Farkas, the United Nations.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Let me finish up on the, got an email from Susan, said, you're in nice language. The segment with Sarah was childish and beneath you. No, it wasn't. Sorry. Appreciate the thoughts, though. No, not beneath us. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. And I highly suggest go back and listen to Sarah's segment. Well worth the entertainment, well worth the time. Love Sarah Burris. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email rick@thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Its color like time of flood beneath the lunar sway, imperial, mysterious, in amorous array. Democracy is color to the USA.